So we'll go ahead and get started. I'd just like to welcome everyone and say good afternoon. My name is Vernon, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our How to Host a Walking School Bus webinar for Richmond District families. Today's webinar is presented by Walk San Francisco in partnership with the San Francisco Safe Routes to School Partnership and the District 1 Supervisor's Office, Supervisor Connie Chan. And now, joining us today, we have Supervisor Chan here, and I'd just like to open up the floor and give her a few moments to say a few words.
Well, thank you so much, Vernon. I'm so glad to be here with Walk SF. I'm really proud to be here. And of course, all the nonprofit partners that we see here on the screen. And it just really can see a good coalition of folks, from SFMTA, and I'm not going to name everybody, but because I'm going to bound to miss someone, but it just, we can all see we're all really excited to do walking school bus. I, for one, I am a mom of a public school student, a second grader, a proud Lafayette second grader. And so I'm happy to see this happening, really love to learn more. I think one of those things that I really enjoy before the pandemic with my son really was walking to school early in the morning, just he and I, the two of us, and that we get to talk about the day, what's the day to come, and also get to reminisce, talk about the day before. So I'm excited to learn more about how we can really, walk to school safely and together as a community. And we also have the opportunity now, even though there are temporary measures like slow streets. In the Richmond, we have Cabrillo, 23rd Avenue, and Lake Street. And so those are our slow streets route in the Richmond for now. Perhaps it could really help us get our walking school bus going. So thank you so much, Walk SF, for hosting this. I really look forward to seeing your presentation.
Thank you, Supervisor Chan, and we share your enthusiasm. As I said before, my name is Vernon, and I'm here today with my colleague, Sam Kwan. And together, we are family and schools coordinators with the city's Safe Routes to School program. And today we're going to be talking about a walking school bus. But before we do, I just want to tell everybody that's on what a walking school bus is. And a walking school bus is simply when children walk together under adult supervision along a recommended route to school. Other children can join in on the walk at any point along the way. And walking school buses are one of the most fun and popular activities that our Safe Routes to School program offers to our different communities in San Francisco. Now, joining us today is our senior transportation planner and San Francisco Safe Routes to School coordinator, Anna Vasudo, who will tell you a little bit more about our program. Anna?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And thank you, Supervisor Chan, for your leadership bringing us together. I think this is the first time that we've done something like this with a supervisor. And so we're really excited. We usually partner with supervisors for our annual events, but it's usually very quick. And I'm so glad that you're taking the time to get to know this program and how it can be an asset for District 1. So thank you for your leadership, and to Walk San Francisco as a partner of the program for putting this event together. As Vernon said, my name is Anna Vasudev, and I'm a senior transportation planner with the SFMTA. The SFMTA is the agency that oversees safe routes to school. We're really happy to be here because we're talking about children, and we know that children are among the most vulnerable people on our streets, right? Keeping our children safe is very important. And so this program, along with our Vision Zero policy goal as a city to reduce and eliminate collisions and fatalities, work hand in hand to make sure that our children stay safe on their way to and from school. And so I like this slide because it shows graphically all of the different partners. And sometimes when people say, oh, we don't hear about Safe Routes to School, it's because it's really a partnership of all these different organizations, right? So sometimes you see the Bike Coalition there or Walk SF, but they're there in the capacity of partners for Safe Routes to School. So it's really nice to have just kind of this graphic display of who we are. We are 4 government agencies and 4 nonprofit partners working hand in hand to make sure all of San Francisco's SFUSD students can get to school safely and sustainably. That's 55,000 kids that we worry about as a partnership and who we want to keep safe on our streets. This year has been a really weird year because of the pandemic, and children are going to start moving back to school in April. However, keeping children safe has been a cornerstone of our program. So we have been working with community hubs. A lot of our partners, Y-Bike has programming at specific hubs, Safe Passage. We've been working with the hubs as a way to kind of supplement some of the support that our children need right now, knowing, kind of shifting a little bit and acknowledging where they're moving right now in our city. The program was formerly housed in SFDPH, but in 2019, it shifted to the SFMTA with the intention of ensuring that we're coordinating more closely with school communities on issues like transit needs, crossing guards, engineering, free Muni for youth, and a program called the Muni Transit Assistance Program. That is a restorative justice to de-escalate conflicts on the bus. So many cities, when there's conflict on the bus, they'll call the police. That's not in our ethos as a city. It's not in our ethos as an agency. And so we use a restorative justice program where we send community ambassadors on certain bus routes where maybe there's tension between high schoolers and middle schoolers. And so the MTAP program goes and they make sure that they de-escalate those conflicts. If there's transit stops near middle schools or high schools where, where there's conflict, we make sure that we send restorative justice staff out there. And so in addition to just, looking at how children get around, we also look at the personal safety of children as part of this program too. So I just want to call that out too, because we know it's a barrier to mode shift. And so as Vernon mentioned, our programmatic goals are to reduce single family vehicle trips to school. We know, and we have data, we collect travel tallies every 2 years as part of this program. So we have data more or less of where children kind of live and how they get to school. We take, travel tallies of elementary, middle school, and high school students. And there's a lot of children that live, within walking distance to their schools, and they're still commuting by car. And so we want to change that narrative and make sure that they feel safe on the street, as our supervisor said, on our new slow streets, to be able to use different, sustainable modes to get around, because we're one of the most congested cities in the United States, second to New York. And so it's really important that we reduce that congestion. And our second goal is to reduce school-related collisions, to really implement Vision Zero, but for schools. In addition to the SFMTA's leadership on this program, I'm thrilled that we get to work with other city partners, such as the Department of the Environment, SFUSD, and SFDPH, which helps us with the evaluation to the program, which I'll put in the chat later if anyone wants to see later. And our 4 community partners, who I'm so thankful for. The San Francisco Bicycle Coalition and Y-Bike handle a lot of our bicycle safety programming. Y-Bike actually teaches bike PE in many of our middle schools and high schools. And this year they're expected to teach over 1,000 children how to ride a bike safely. It's been really hard to teach them via Zoom, but we're hoping to be able to do some in-person programming soon. I also want to give a shout out to Tenderloin Safe Passage, which is one of these organizations that looks at personal safety issues as a barrier to getting to school. And so we actually pay Safe Passage staff at schools like Tenderloin Community School to walk children to school and to their after school programs after school, because some of the streets that they navigate, they're dangerous both because of congestion and traffic issues in the Tenderloin. But aside from that, there's also personal safety barriers that makes children feel unsafe walking around the Tenderloin. So we send community ambassadors to actually physically walk with them. Similarly, we do similar work in Chinatown as well. And last but not least, Walk San Francisco, that has been instrumental in providing pedestrian safety education to our school communities and to our community learning hubs. So thank you so much, Walk SF, for your leadership. And I'm thrilled to be here today just to learn about your concerns as we prepare to reopen. I know that a lot of you are here, and parents want to know, how do we, now that there's light at the end of the tunnel, we have our reopening dates, what is that going to look like this year? During shelter in place, we've been really proud at the SFMTA that we introduced 30 new slow streets to be able to help our families feel safer on residential streets. We've tried to improve signage and barricades so that they're more visible, right? And so that's something new. I don't know if anyone has seen our new purple signs, but we're trying to make sure that slow streets are more easy to identify. And last but not least, we've done a lot of proactive engineering at our schools to make sure that our drop-off is as seamless as possible. And so I'm kind of like the 311 of SFMTA. If there's a school issue, it's an agency of 6,000 people. And so people will ping me and then I'll say, can we find you that person to solve the issue? Probably 50–60% of the time, the issues are solved by a wonderful person named Andre Wright, who I'm so glad is here. He is one of our best engineers at the SFMTA who really cares passionately about keeping our children safe. I mean, Andre, I'm gonna let him introduce himself, but one of the things that I miss about working in person with Andre is just waking up at, like, I live in the East Bay, Andre also lives in the East Bay. We'll get to the city like at 7 a.m., which means, we wake up at 5:30, we're there at drop off and at pickup because we know that's the most dangerous time around schools. And we'll observe behavior. So sometimes the principal will call and say, this street isn't working, or the parents are fighting, or the neighbors are upset, and we'll say, all right, send us out. And Andre and I will go and kind of spy and see what's going on. And then we go back and we strategize ways to fix that street. And so I'll let him introduce himself, but we can't do any of our work without him. So Andre.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Andre Wright. I'm an associate engineer with the SFMTA, sometimes known as the schools engineer. And what I like to do and have been tasked to do is basically when there are traffic-related requests around schools in the city and county of San Francisco, then they are assigned to me, unless they are a part of a larger project that might involve, some kind of streetscape aspect or something. But usually if it's something that has to do with a loading zone, as Anna mentioned, or if there is a request for a stop sign or a signal timing change or a crosswalk that needs to be repainted, or actually a request to have one installed, or any kinds of markings or signage around schools, then I am usually the one who is assigned that task. So usually those requests come to me and I try to answer them as quickly as possible. Also work with folks like Anna and all of the supervisors as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And now I will turn it over to my co-host, Sam Kwan.
Hey everyone, and thanks Anna, thank you Andre, thank you Supervisor Chan. I'm so happy that we're all getting together today, but I also want to say hello to some of our little ones maybe at homes, and we have a little assignment for our youngest audience members. Go ahead and draw or write about your favorite way of getting around. Do you enjoy walking, biking, carpooling, scootering, hopping, skipping, flying? Share your drawings with us on social media, Instagram and Twitter. You can tag us at WalkSF. Yeah, we're excited to see your favorite way of getting around. And we have our first polling question as well. We'd love to hear about your favorite way of getting around, your whole family's favorite way of getting around. Is it to walk, bike, carpool, muni, scooter, hop, skip, fly? Let us know. Awesome. Looks like we have a lot of walkers and bikers in here. Awesome. Okay, so here is our agenda. Vernon, your slideshow.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There we go. So today we're going to look at some fun and unique ways of getting around, such as a walking school bus that can serve our communities in different ways, such as combating truancy, building community, and also some other ways of creating safer environments, as well as cultural competent walking school buses. And we're going to start by sharing about how ways we can identify a walking school bus in our community. I'm going to have Vernon take over.
Awesome. Yeah, so first we'll just reiterate what a walking school bus is. And like I said, a walking school bus is when folks take a recommended route to school, allowing other families to join in on that route at any point along the way. So let's talk about how we can identify the right walking school bus for your community. And the first type of walking school bus that we're going to talk about are our walking school buses to combat truancy. So a truancy walking school bus is organized for the purpose of reducing truancy, missed or late attendance at a school. A truancy walking school bus is organized by educators or safe routes to school chaperones to ensure a safe and structured way to get to school on time. The San Francisco Safe Routes to School staff works with school communities to better understand their challenges of chronic absenteeism and learn how to partner to evaluate walking school buses as a tool for reducing truancy. Sam?
Thanks. Another one is an environmental safety walking school bus, which helps to address traffic, unsafe sidewalks, and other concerning conditions such as negative activities on the way to school. Another one is the cultural competent walking school bus, which helps to celebrate its cultural traditions, as well as recruiting community members to participate in and support the walking school bus activity. And in this slide, you can see that this is Jean Parker and Johnny Hill Chin's walking school bus, which has attendances up to 100 people before COVID. And this is another time for another poll. We'd love to hear about what's the primary language spoken in your home, just to get an idea of our audience, where they're coming from. Great, I'm seeing a lot of English and Chinese. My household is predominantly, we speak in Chinese for the benefit of all of us. Okay, awesome, thanks so much. Go ahead, Vernon.
Yeah, so you could definitely say that all of our walking school buses are community builders, but this last category is actually called a community building walking school bus. And this walking school bus is organized solely to unite community members. Community building walking school buses help children, families, and community members to get to know each other a little bit better. Like all of our walking school buses, this one serves as a way to encourage a fun, healthy, and different way to get to school. A community building walking school bus has the added benefit of inspiring parents to get more involved in their school's leadership. And we know we can all use this. As you can see, walking school buses can be a great resource to answer a community's needs and a fun activity for parents and community members who are looking for opportunities to volunteer, support, and become more involved at their schools. So ask yourself, your fellow parents, your PTA members, your school staff, and of course your students, how they think a walking school bus could benefit their community. And now we have another polling question for you. And that is, how might you use a walking school bus for your school community? Just give everybody a few minutes to submit their answers there. Now that we've looked over the types of walking school buses and how they can support your community, let's talk about how you can get this fun activity started. First, you want to start talking to your community, identifying the leaders, and we'll show you how to select the best route. Go over stages of promotion, and then we'll discuss some of the challenges that may come with starting a walking school bus as well. So walking school buses can be a great way for community members to come together and get to know one another. First, find out what your community needs and who is available to help. This is a great opportunity to build community engagement. You can work with your community members to let them know that you'll be starting a walking school bus and that you'll be walking through the community in the mornings and maybe afternoons. They may even have some insight on the best practices to help people get from point A to point B. And the reason why we're talking to our community is because, of course, we want to identify our leaders. Now that you know, or now that you're thinking about what type of walking school bus you might want to launch, let's find out who your leaders are. Walking school bus leaders can be found among the faculty at your school, and this includes your principals, classroom and PE teachers, administrative staff, and even the crossing guards. All of these folks at the school all of these school community members have vast knowledge and insight into your school. Crossing guards especially, as they are present before and after school, and they may have some tips to share with you to help people get safely from point A to point B. Your other big resource is, of course, your fellow families and caregivers. Stay after the bell rings to talk to the parent, talk to your parent community members, and listen for the talents that they might bring, such as organization, mobility, proficiency in other languages, and even graphic design skills for promotion. You may uncover a treasure trove of skills that may come in handy along the way. Additional channels to find walking school bus leadership and support may be found through district and citywide PTAs, where these exist. Some of these organizations may have held a walking school bus before and can support or point you in the right direction of someone who can. It's a network with knowledge and care for the school community. Check with your local after school programs to identify possible leaders as well, many of whom will be familiar with your school and neighborhood. Check with local. You also want to check with local faith organizations and small businesses that may be on your route. A cafe is always a fun stop for a mid-walk snack if there's time. And last but far from least are the many community-based organizations in your neighborhood, including our Safe Routes to School partners like Walk San Francisco, the San Francisco Bike Coalition, Tenderloin Safe Passage, Y Bike. We are all here to help you identify walking school bus leaders. And now I'll pass it back to Sam.
Thanks, Vernon. Let's talk a little bit about how we can plan our route. This is a really great opportunity to include one of San Francisco's new slow streets, like Anna had said, that SFMT has been working so hard on, is Lake Street, 23rd Avenue, or Cabrillo near your starting point or near your school. And here's some guidelines to follow when you're looking for a route. Make sure that there's light or no traffic congestion. Look for barriers such as bike lanes or car parking that separate the traffic from the pedestrian when you're walking spaces. Think about the personal safety, and this looks really different for different people. Survey the streets you may be traveling along and be sure to feel comfortable. Think about the school bell as well when your route think about for your route, your students from pickup school and making sure that it's done in a reasonable time frame. And choose a route that's safe and accessible to your younger walkers too. Is a sidewalk wide enough to accommodate children or adult using wheelchairs, scooters, and canes? And when you plan a start or meeting location that has shelter in case of bad weather or emergency, you can try like a local cafe, and that way they can get some treats along the way too. Next is the route selection. And in this slide, you're going to see the two examples of potential routes for a walking school bus. This one in particular serves Tenderloin. The route on the left is the more direct route. It's about a 3 minutes shorter travel time as compared to the one on the right. We chose the route on the right because it is a safer route, avoiding the traffic and negative activity, but only adding 3 minutes to a travel time. And this prioritizes safety, which Vernon will follow up in our next slide. But before that, I want to have another poll. Have any of you visited any of your slow streets in your neighborhood? Cabrillo, Lake, 23rd, JFK, Martin Luther King Drive, Overlook Drive? I'd love to hear.
Thanks, Sam. So here's a more detailed list of things that we look for when we're choosing our route. We call this our walkability assessment. And there's no need for you to write all this down because along with the survey that we'll be sending after this webinar, we'll also include a walkability assessment for everyone. We just wanted to highlight a few components to look out for when you're planning your route. Things such as uneven pavement, obstructions in the walking path, which make it inaccessible for students and people with disabilities, dangerous or unsafe activities happening along the walk or the route, difficult terrain like hills, and remembering to avoid busy intersections. Also, we always like to look for wide sidewalks with good lighting for any of our after school walks as well. And now that we've shown you some examples of route selection, we want to ask a quick question on how comfortable you all may feel about planning a route for your family or walking school bus.
Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of confidence in our audience, which is always good news. Next, we're going to talk about promotion. So if you figured out the type of walking school bus you want and you've identified fellow leaders, you've researched a fun, safe, and accessible route. So it's time to promote your walking school bus to get students on board. It's important to have broad outreach to let everyone know about your event. You want to promote through the school calendar, social media, newsletters, as well as flyers. And then next, we also have person-to-person promotion, which is also very important. You want to create flyers with the location time. Nope, next slide, Vernon. You want to create flyers with the location, the time, and route for students to know about the walking school bus effort. You want to promote on-site visits, school events, pickup and drop-off times are great ways to connect with parents, like Vernon had mentioned earlier. But you also want to check in with your after-school programs to let them know about your efforts as well. You can also promote at principal chats, morning circles, PTA meetings, and always remember to be culturally competent in your promotion and outreach. There are monolingual families in your community, and be sure that those materials are available in the language they speak. Similar to the flyer you see on the right, we created that in Arabic for Reading Elementary School, as they have a very big population that speak Arabic, and we want to make sure that they can join us.
Yeah, which brings us to our next polling question. And it's just simple. We just like to know the primary language spoken in your home. So I know we make starting a walking sound bus sound easy, and it really is. And don't worry, you'll have us there for your support if you need it. But also, you can come across some challenges. So maybe you can't find any support in your school community or after school programs for starting this walking school bus. It can also be difficult to find volunteers sometimes, but we want you to stick with it and remember to start small if you need to. Even a few children and a couple of fellow parents can launch a walking school bus and build enthusiasm in the larger community. It's important to continuously work together in our communities to overcome these challenges. And remember, you're not alone. The San Francisco Safe Routes to School Partnership is here to support you always. A recent challenge that has occurred has been the current pandemic of COVID-19. And now we just want to share a few words about COVID and keeping your community in good health. So first of all walking school bus participants should follow San Francisco Department of Public Health's guidelines when participating in a walking school bus. And if you've attended one of our Get Out webinars, then you'll know that being outside is strongly recommended. And here's how to stay safe and healthy on your walks together. First, everyone should wear a face mask. Second, walkers can use a safety rope or can make safety ropes using tape to mark off the 6 feet of distance between all walkers, and be sure to disinfect this rope before and after each walk. Third, hosts and participants should all go through a COVID-19 health screening before joining in on the walk.
And then one thing that I wanted to say, Vernon, can you go back to that slide that you're on just really quickly? That currently right now, public health guidance does not let us mix more than 3 households for walking school buses, which is a challenge as we try to prepare to reopen. And so the MTA and DPH are working together to make sure that we can update that protocol so that we can mix more than 3 households. But stay tuned. If you're eager to launch a walking school bus, please reach out to us and we can give you the green light as soon as the public health protocol has been updated.
Thank you, Anna. So here's some supplies you'll need to have a safe and fun walking school bus. You'll need to include a sign-in sheet asking for names and emails. This will enable you to contact people if there were to be a case of COVID-19. You need safety vests, stop signs, hand sanitizers, extra face masks for each participant, and a brief health screening checklist to make sure that all participants are safe and healthy before you begin your walks. If you need help sourcing these things, you can reach out to myself, Vernon at Walk San Francisco, and I can help to provide you with a walking school bus safety kit. And now I'll pass it back to Sam.
Thanks, Vernon. Like Vernon said, he dropped his information, and this is mine as well, sam@walksf.org. While we have this up, we also have another polling question for you all. We'd love to hear about, after this webinar, would you be interested in leading walking school bus for your school community? Just to give us an idea of how many people are interested, especially from D1, working with Supervisor Chan's office. Great, thank you so much. And then we have one last one. It is the question of, would you feel comfortable allowing your student or students to participate in a walking school bus when school reopens? Yes, no, or maybe. And while you're filling that out, we also have a little link right here that has the Walking School Bus Toolkit. It's a little bit long, and we can include it in the email that we send to all of you right after this. And we also have a Safe Routes to School website. It's sfsaferoutes.org. Here's WalkSF's website as well, which is walksf.org. And you can always see what we're up to on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at WalkSF. Awesome. So we're seeing a good amount of yeses and maybes for allow our students to participate in a walking school bus when we reopen. All right, I'm gonna send this back over to Vernon.
Yeah, lastly, we just wanted to leave 10 to 15 minutes for our audience to ask any questions they may have for myself or Sam about how they can start a walking school bus, or any questions they may have for Andre Wright, our associate engineer, joining us today from the Transportation and Engineering Operations Department from the Sustainable Streets Division of the SFMTA.
You're all welcome to maybe raise a hand, or it seems pretty quiet, so people can also maybe unmute themselves, or you can also use the chat box as well. You're welcome to drop any kind of questions that you have for Vernon or I or Andre, like Vernon said.
I have a sorry. This is Connie. I guess I have a quick question. My question will be, I think you were saying how we should start in a meeting point that like a cafe, but right now because it's COVID, it's the typical cafe that will allow some space for gathering. It's probably limited. Are there any other suggestion that you think we could gather, besides a cafe? Any thoughts and try so that we can be creative about where we can meet and gather and start our walking bus?
Yes, that's a great question, Supervisor Chan. And another great meeting point that we like to start walking school buses are, especially for like walking around the school day, is a park or neighborhood community center, libraries. Those are all great places with lots of open space outside, seating, and coverings in case of bad weather.
Yeah, outdoor public spaces, as Vernon said, parks or slow streets, and we know that some of the slow streets are going through a process to become permanent. But basically, any outdoor public spaces right now during the pandemic is what we're looking at and what we're discussing with TPH as the safest meeting point. That's a great question, Supervisor.
Thank you. And one more, because I definitely am interested in starting walk to school bus. And
you mentioned that we should also have like stop sign. Like you mean like that we could hold a stop sign, and where can we get a stop sign that we could hold?
So that's a great question as well, Supervisor Chan. If folks are interested in getting a stop sign and other things like safety vests, they can reach out to myself, Vernon at Walk San Francisco, and we can supply them with what's called a walking school bus safety kit. And it comes with safety vest, about 10 safety vests, stop signs, and also an umbrella for bad weather in case you're leading the walking school bus. And we can also help you to get signage for promotions for the walking school bus as well.
I have a question. I'm at Argonne School, and we have people coming from kind of all the directions, not just like one direction. What do you recommend in that situation? Do we have multiple school buses, multiple routes, like a whole, I think my sister's school does this in Oakland, and they have like different groups that walk from different places. And there's just like a spreadsheet, I guess, and you can sign up for it. Is that what you guys usually recommend?
Yes, so you can, for the walking school buses, it's usually what suits your community best. There are sign-in sheets. You can start a phone bank or a phone list with community members who are interested. And in the walking school bus toolkit that'll be mailed out in the thank you email after this webinar, you will see some examples of sign-in sheets that you can use. And also like permission forms in case there is a need to get permission from other parents to allow their students to walk with another family.
There's another question in the chat box. What's the average distance or time that we could or should recommend students to walk? What seems most reasonable?
I would say if you within a half a mile to a mile, that's reasonable for a good walking school bus. Just because if you find a central meeting point, it's convenient for everybody, and you want to also think about families who may have grandparents who are walking students, or may have or students who may have disabilities. You don't want it to be too strenuous on them.
And we can help you. So if your school community is like, give us an idea of what streets those would be. Just reach out to Sam or Vernon and we can help you map it out too. So, because sometimes it's half a mile, but sometimes there could be barriers too. Like maybe there's, a busy road that goes in between that takes a little longer to cross. We like to think about what are the other barriers within that distance too, that might make it a little harder. And so we can help you plan the best route.
Also, I see in the chat that we have a question for Andre. And it's, how do you work with the schools to keep them safe? And what kind of issues do you address near schools?
Well, thank you to whoever asked that question. I work with the schools in different ways, depending on the requests, mainly from the school. So usually if they request that they need a loading zone or they need a loading zone time change, then I work with them to help accomplish that. If they request that a stop sign be installed at an intersection that is near their school, then I will do an evaluation to judge whether or not we're able to put in a stop sign if it's warranted or not. Also, if they are requesting additional signage near the school or signage is missing. Also, I try to do a proactive assessment of schools as well. If there is a signal near the school, they want to change the signal timing, then I can do that type of evaluation as well. So I usually try to stay in connection with the schools as much as possible. Usually the requests are made through the principals. Sometimes parents like to make requests, but we always make sure that the school is kept in the loop so that we make sure that the request is something that the school is in favor of as well.
Thank you, Andre. And it looks like we have one more for Andre or Anna, SFMTA. And it's with the reopening of schools coming up. What are some common issues that you may be seeing?
With the reopening of schools, some things that we might be concerned about is the loading and the loading zones, basically pick up and drop off. A lot of times the existing times we're concerned might not address what's going to be necessary for the new schedules. So we're actually working on trying to be proactive in making an encompassing time for the loading zones. A lot of times, like I mentioned, they would be split. So for instance, it might be a 7 to 9 and a 2 to 4. So we're working to try to make it just a 7 to 4 type for locations that don't already have an already all day time restriction.
Thanks. We have another question from Denise as well. Do walking school buses run daily or once a week, or does it depend on the school?
Depends on the school. So some of them run once a week, some of them run monthly, and then there's some in the Tenderloin that they're daily because the children really depend on them, like at Tenderloin Community School, to get to school and also to the different after school activities. There's 3 walking school buses that run to 3 different after school sites at that school. So it really depends on the culture of your school and your students' needs and your volunteer capacity too. So for some schools, we have, paid staff, but we call them the deep dive schools. Schools that we know are on the high injury network have a high percentage of students on free and reduced lunch. For some of those schools, we as a partnership play a heavier hand. So the whole partnership oversees 103 schools in SFUSD, and 33 of them receive a lot of support because of the percentage of children on free and reduced lunch and the proximity to high injury streets. But if your school doesn't fit into that criteria, what some schools have done is that they've organized parent volunteers to lead these efforts. So it depends on the capacity of the volunteers at your school.
Great. And there's another question of, have you seen walking school buses work for after school, or do you recommend only mornings? I think we've answered a little bit of that too, about like how we can use it as helping to combat truancy. And we've seen this through San Francisco as well at like Malcolm X. It's helped a whole lot for mornings, especially helping to relieve parents in the morning. A lot of parents have multiple children, and some may not be in school yet. So, and they also have to get themselves to work too. They have a really busy morning, so it helps a lot in that way too. And it helps a whole lot for after school programs. We work hand in hand pretty often with after school programs like the Y. It's not always located within school. So walking those couple extra blocks really, really help a lot. And those after school leaders are always happy to help out in leading school buses too. Vernon, am I missing anything?
No, I just comment on that to say one example of after school programs that I've seen that works really well using walking school buses, E.R. Taylor, located in the Potrero. They have 3 walking school buses. They have 3 different after school programs that serve their school. And one is a beacon site, which is on campus, but the other sites are from 3 different community organizations, and none of those are held on campus, but they all meet all of their students that participate in those after programs. They meet in 3 different groups on the playground, and then they walk to their sites as a walking school bus from there. So it's a great tool for after school walks, for even students or families just to walk in a group to feel safer together. It's kind of like, it could also be used kind of like carpooling for families, like if there's a family that can't pick up their student, then walking school buses can serve as a way to help those students get home from school afterwards as well, or to school. And lastly, it looks like we want to know from the SFMTA how what are the other programs that the SFMTA has that are offering that are serving schools?
That's a great question. We have programs like Free Muni for Youth that our youth can apply to receive free Muni cards to be able to ride the Muni for free. And so we just entered this partnership with SFUSD to make sure that if you're signing up for free and reduced lunch, you would also qualify for your free Muni card. So that's really exciting for us. We also have the MTAP program, the Muni Transit Assistance Program. And so if you have a middle school or a high school, or even an elementary school, but most of the MTAP requests come from the older grades, where your students feel unsafe at a Muni stop or on a specific Muni line, do let us know. You have Sam, and I'll put my email here too, so we can reach out to the MTAP team and see if we can send out MTAP ambassadors to ride those lines so that your students at your school community feel safe on the bus. We have the crossing guard program that behind the scenes, I can tell you what's happening with that now is that we're working as the school district is trying to put a lot of the logistics in place to reopen. We are working with them to understand the arrival time, the dismissal time, and make sure that the guards are in place as schools reopen through the different waves that SFUSD has announced. And so that's another school serving program that we have. Slow Streets is new, but I would call that a school serving program as well. There are certain slow streets, especially ones, I think there's one by Cesar Chavez Elementary that's up for permanent slow street right now. So some of the slow streets in the network of 30 are being considered for permanent slow streets. And those are streets where maybe the neighborhood has, requested this or has, there's a lot of neighborhood buy-in to convert a temporary slow street into a permanent slow street. And so that for me is a school serving street because it really helps improve, the walkability and the bikeability near the school. And so that's an exciting new element that has come to fruition during the pandemic. School trippers that are, specific bus routes for schools as capacity on transit opens. One of the things that has been really hard for us as an agency during the pandemic is that our capacity has been down, but as that increases, school trippers might come back. And so I'm happy to, I think I put information about a blog that we wrote that can give everybody more of an update as to what's happening on the transit side. So those are some of the school adjacent programs that serve the school community within the SFMTA. And of course, for us, Safe Routes to School as a partnership is a key player in all of this because we, I think we're like the glue that holds all of the school programs together for the agency.
Thank you, Anna. And lastly, we just want to take a second to say thanks to the, we just want to say thank you because this project was made possible in part by the One Bay Area grant program provided by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Also in part by Proposition K sales tax dollars provided to the San Francisco County Transportation Authority. And we want to thank all of you for joining us today. And we want to encourage everyone to get out and have a walk today. So here's our last poll before we go. And it's just asking everyone how far you've got out and walked the road today.
While we're answering that, Vernon, there was another question of, is there an ideal parent-chaperone student ratio for a walking school bus? Which is a great question, especially in light with the latest health codes.
Yes, as Anna mentioned earlier, with the new health codes, there should only be 3 families joining at a time. But recommendations usually for walking school buses is 1 parent for every 5, or 1 chaperone for every 5 students. And that's usually our recommendation. If you have large groups, I would recommend at least 3 leaders so that we shouldn't have large groups right now, but if we're returning to where we can gather in larger groups. I would recommend at least 3 leaders for those larger groups. You want somebody to lead in the front. You want somebody to have the middle to be able to trade off when crossing intersections. And also you want to have a caboose or a tail, somebody who just makes sure nobody falls behind and everybody gets across the street safely.
Yeah, and the normal school year, like when we're in neighborhoods like Chinatown and we have 150 students crossing at the same time, which is not going to happen right now during the pandemic, but maybe in the fall if things go back to normal. In some neighborhoods, the police actually comes to stop traffic so that the children can cross safely. But that's the only time that we ever collaborate with the PD on this, is if they need to, be there to stop traffic. So, some walking school buses are really small, and some, like the Chinatown ones, are really large. So there's a range.
And before we go, just in case you didn't get a chance to get out and get a walk or roll today, or you're planning to get out over the weekend and have another walk or roll, we have here some ways that you can make your walks a little bit with your family in small groups even more fun. And we have a few fun walks here from Walk San Francisco. The first is an alphabet walk, and you can look for items around your neighborhood that start with each letter of the alphabet. The second would be a shape walk, and that's where you draw or print a map of your neighborhood and draw a route that that's a shape and follow it. We have the animal hunt, which is where you take a walk and you look for pets staying at home with their families, guarding their homes. Some people are even putting up their best stuffed animal friends and photos of their favorite animal. And lastly, we recently made a scavenger hunt to look for items like fire hydrants, murals, stained glass, bikes, and even discover a great view while you're out. So you can see how many you can get, and please share it with us on Twitter or Instagram, and be sure to tag us at Walk San Francisco, at Walk SF, sorry. And also, please check out our blogs for more fun ways to keep moving and discovering San Francisco. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and also to share that this webinar is recorded and will be shared out with you at a later date. So
And thank you, Supervisor Chan, for your leadership. We really appreciate it. She's already outside. Awesome. Safe Routes champion. Thanks, Supervisor.
Thank you, Walk SF.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Chan, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.